My brother forged my signature on a $240,000 loan. He didn't tell me. My parents didn't tell me. I found out the same way I find out about everything important in my life alone. At midnight, staring at a screen that had no reason to lie to me. The notification came on a Tuesday. A credit alert from the monitoring service I'd set up 3 years ago after a client of mine had her identity stolen by a coworker. I remember thinking it was probably nothing. A hard inquiry from a store card. Maybe a gym membership I'd forgotten to cancel. I set my coffee down, opened the app, and read the line twice before my brain accepted what my eyes were seeing. New mortgage account opened. Lender, Hartwell Federal Credit Union. Amount, $240,000. Date of origination, 11 days ago. I didn't own a house. I had never applied for a mortgage. I was renting a one-bedroom apartment in Charlotte and saving carefully, the way you save when you've learned the hard way that no one is coming to rescue you. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I opened my laptop, pulled up my credit report and started reading. Before I tell you what I found, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I'd love to know who's part of this community. The full report took 40 minutes to load and cross-reference. By the time I finished, my coffee was cold and I had 7 pages of notes in a legal pad I'd grabbed from my desk drawer. My name. My social security number. My date of birth. All of it used with the kind of casual confidence that only comes from someone who knows you well enough to answer your security questions. I'm a contract attorney. I've spent 5 years reviewing documents that other people sign without reading, untangling messes that begin with someone saying I thought it was fine. I know what financial fraud looks like when it's sloppy. I know what it looks like when it's personal. This was personal. The address on the mortgage application was 14 Birchwood Lane, my parents' house. The property the loan was secured against a duplex 2 streets over had been purchased in my name 11 days ago. Someone had signed my name, provided my credentials, and was already collecting rent from 2 tenants who had no idea the woman on their lease had never set foot in the building. I sat in my apartment until 3 in the morning, building the file. Then I called my mother and told her I was coming to Sunday dinner. She sounded delighted. My brother's name is Marcus. He's 31, 2 years older than me, and he has spent his entire adult life being extraordinary at one specific thing, making other people feel responsible for his problems. When he dropped out of college his junior year, my parents paid off his tuition debt. When his first business failed, my parents refinanced their home to cover the losses. When his second business failed, they raided my mother's retirement account. Each time, there was a story. A circumstance beyond his control. A market that turned. A partner who betrayed him. Marcus was never the cause of anything. He was always the casualty. And I was always the quiet one in the background, the one who got good grades and kept her head down and was told, implicitly and explicitly, that being responsible was its own reward. The Sunday dinner invitation had actually come from my mother 2 weeks before the credit alert. She'd been calling more than usual, leaving voicemails about how much she missed me, how Marcus was going through a rough patch, how it would mean so much to the family if I came home. I put it off twice. After the credit report, I called back and confirmed. I needed them to believe I didn't know anything. I needed them comfortable. Comfortable people make mistakes. Comfortable people say the quiet part out loud. I had 10 days. I used them carefully. I contacted Hartwell Federal Credit Union through my firm's letterhead, identifying myself as legal counsel representing the account holder. They were cooperative once they understood the situation. I obtained the origination documents. The signature on the loan application was close, not perfect, but close enough to pass a distracted review. The notarization stamp was from a UPS store location 3 miles from my parents' house. I drove past it on a Thursday afternoon and took photographs. I pulled the duplex purchase records from the county recorder's office. The deed had been transferred into a holding entity, a limited liability company registered in my name 8 weeks ago. I had never formed that LLC. I had never authorized anyone to form it on my behalf. The registered agent address was a mailbox rental service on the east side of town. The tenants in the duplex were a young couple on the first floor and a retired schoolteacher on the second. They had been paying rent by electronic transfer to an account I had never seen. $1,400 a month, per unit. Nearly $3,000 a month flowing into an account in my name that I could not access because the password had been set by someone else. I documented everything. I organized it into a folder, printed copies, and stored them in 3 separate locations. Then I called a colleague at a firm that specializes in financial crimes and asked her to review the package as a professional courtesy. Her exact words were, "Claire, this is textbook. This is practically a teaching case." On Saturday night, I drove to my parents' house and walked through the front door with a bottle of wine and a peach cobbler I'd made from scratch. My mother hugged me for a long time. My father shook my hand the way he always does, firm and formal, like we are business associates who happen to share a last name. Marcus was already there, sitting at the kitchen island with a beer, scrolling his phone. He looked up when I walked in. "Hey, little sis," he said. Hey, I said. I set the cobbler on the counter and smiled. We ate dinner the way our family always eats dinner, with my mother working too hard to keep the conversation pleasant and my father waiting for an opening to say what he actually came to say. It took until the second helping of pot roast before he found it. He cleared his throat. He set his fork down with deliberate weight. He looked across the table at me the way people look at someone they've already decided is going to agree with them. We need to talk about the duplex, he said. I reached for my water glass. Okay. My mother smiled carefully. We've been meaning to bring this up for a while. We just wanted to wait for the right moment. The right moment, I repeated. My father nodded. Marcus has been working on something. A real estate investment strategy. He identified the property, he did the research, and he put in the work. But his credit. He paused. His credit isn't where it needs to be right now. Banks are difficult. You know how they are. I do, I said. The thing is, Marcus said, leaning forward now, his voice taking on the particular warmth he uses when he wants something, the property is already performing. The tenants are in, the rent is coming in on schedule. I just need a little time to get the financing restructured. Probably 6 months. Maybe a year. I looked at him. Tell me about the property. He was happy to. Marcus loves talking about his plans. He described the duplex in detail, the location, the condition, the cap rate, the projected appreciation. He used the vocabulary of someone who had watched a lot of YouTube videos about real estate investing. He talked about passive income and equity building and generational wealth. My mother nodded along. My father occasionally interjected with approving sounds. As he spoke, I listened for the specific thing I needed to hear. I needed him to confirm, in his own words, in front of witnesses, that he knew the property existed, that he knew the loan existed, and that he understood both were tied to my identity. He gave me all three inside of 4 minutes. So what you're saying, I said slowly, when he paused to take a drink, is that the loan is in my name, the deed is in my name, the tenants are paying into an account in my name, and you've been managing this without telling me. We were going to tell you, my mother said quickly. That's what tonight is. We're telling you now. It's already done, my father said. The hard part is over. We just need you to be cooperative going forward. We need you to sign a few things so Marcus can access the rental income directly. I set my fork down. What kind of things? My father reached into the chair beside him and produced a manila envelope. He set it on the table between us. A power of attorney for the property management account. A co-signer agreement for the loan. Just formalities. It cleans everything up legally. I looked at the envelope. I knew exactly what was inside it. I had seen the draft versions 3 weeks ago when I'd subpoenaed Marcus's email through a civil discovery process my colleague had initiated on my behalf. It wasn't a formality. It was a trap. Signing those documents would have transformed an unauthorized act into an authorized one. It would have made me legally liable for a loan I'd never applied for, on a property I'd never agreed to purchase, managed by a brother who had already spent 14 months of rental income before I'd ever sat down at this table. You want me to ratify it, I said. My father frowned. We want you to be part of the family. That's a nice way to put it, I said. My mother reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. Claire. Marcus has been struggling. You know how hard it's been for him. He has real talent, he just needs support. He needs someone who believes in him. She squeezed my fingers. You're his sister. This is what family does. I looked at her hand on mine. I thought about the $14,000 that had been deposited into an account in my name over the past 11 months. I thought about the credit score I had spent 6 years building, point by careful point, which was now encumbered by a $240,000 liability I had never agreed to. I thought about the application for a car loan I had submitted 3 weeks ago that had come back denied, and how I hadn't understood why until I pulled the credit report. I agree, I said. Family should support each other. My mother's face softened with relief. Which is why, I said, I've spent the last 10 days making sure everyone gets exactly what they deserve. The table went quiet. Not the polite quiet of a conversation pausing. The wrong kind of quiet. The kind where something invisible shifts and everyone in the room feels it before they understand it. I reached into my bag. I want to be clear about something. I am not a dramatic person. I don't make speeches. I don't believe in scenes. I spent most of my childhood and all of my adult life being the one who stayed calm, who solved problems quietly, who cleaned up other people's messes without requiring acknowledgement. I became a contract attorney because I am better at reading documents than I am at reading rooms, and because documents don't gaslight you. What I placed on that table was not theater. It was a file. Organized, tabbed and dated. The kind of file I prepare for clients who need to understand what has been done to them. The first document was the credit report. I set it in front of my mother. This is what I found 11 days ago, I said. A mortgage account I didn't open, a deed to a property I didn't purchase, and an LLC formed in my name without my knowledge or consent. My father's jaw tightened. Claire, I'm not finished. I placed the second document on top of the first. This is the origination paperwork from Hartwell Federal. This is my signature as it appears on the loan application. I pointed to the line. This is my actual signature, pulled from a contract I filed with my firm 18 months ago. I laid them side by side. They're similar. They're not the same. Marcus pushed back slightly from the table. Look, I can explain the timeline. The third document, I said, setting it down, is the deed of transfer for the duplex at 1847 Mercer Street. Recorded in my name. I have never been to that address. The fourth document is the bank statements for the property management account. 14 months of deposits. 14 months of withdrawals. All of it moving into a personal account that was opened with my social security number and my driver's license number, but with a phone number that is not mine and an email address I've never seen. My mother had gone very still. The fifth document, I said, is from the county district attorney's office. It's an acknowledgement of receipt. They received the full package, every document I just showed you, plus 3 additional exhibits 12 hours ago. The silence in that dining room was the most complete silence I have ever heard. It had weight. It pressed against the walls. My father was the first to speak. You went to the DA. His voice was flat. Not a question. A statement of something he was still processing. I'm an officer of the court, I said. When I became aware of financial fraud committed in my name, I had a professional obligation to report it. I also had a personal one. I looked at Marcus. You used my identity to take out $250,000 loan. You've been collecting rent on a property I legally own but have never benefited from. You forged my signature. That's wire fraud, identity theft, and forgery. At minimum. Marcus stood up. This is insane. I was going to pay you back. I was building something. With my name, I said. Without my permission. You would have said no, he said, and his voice cracked with a specific kind of frustration, the frustration of someone who has never understood why the word no should apply to him. You always say no. You're so careful. You're so cautious. You never take any risks. I had an opportunity and I needed a name with good credit and I handled it. I was going to make you a partner once it was profitable. You were going to make me a partner, I repeated slowly. Yes. In a business I financed without knowing it. On a loan I'm legally liable for. As a reward for the use of my identity. Claire. My mother's voice was high and thin. Please. Please think about what you're doing. This is your brother. This is your family. If you go through with this, I already went through with it, I said. That's what I'm trying to explain. This isn't a negotiation. This isn't me threatening to do something. The referral is filed. The documentation is with the DA's office, the credit union's fraud department, the state bar's identity theft task force, and a civil litigation hold has been placed on the duplex property pending investigation. I looked at her steadily. I didn't come here tonight to decide anything. I came here to tell you what was already decided. My father got to his feet slowly. He is a large man. He has always used that size the way some men do, not violently, but atmospherically. Taking up space in a way that signals the conversation is over. He walked around the table. He stopped between me and the door to the hallway. You are not leaving this house with those documents, he said. I looked up at him. They're copies. Claire. His voice dropped. You have no idea what you're starting. Marcus is not going to prison over a real estate transaction. You are going to call the DA's office tomorrow morning and you are going to tell them it was a misunderstanding. That you authorized this. That you forgot. I'm not going to do that. You're going to do that, he said, because if you don't, I will make sure every person in your professional network knows that you fabricated a dispute with your own family for financial gain. I will tell them you tried to steal your brother's property. I will call your firm. I studied his face. I had known this was the moment. The escalation. The point where the people who have been taking from you for years decide that the appropriate response to being caught is to threaten to take something else. Go ahead and call the firm, I said. My supervising partner has already been briefed. She reviewed the documentation this morning. She's the one who recommended the civil litigation hold. His expression flickered. And the voicemail you left me 3 weeks ago, I said, the one where you said Marcus needed a favor and that it would be better for everyone if I was cooperative, that voicemail is in the file too. The DA's office found it instructive. My father took a step backward. Also, I said, standing up and picking up my bag, I want you to know that I recorded this dinner. The voice memo application on my phone has been running since I sat down, Marcus confirmed. On this recording, that he knew the loan was in my name. You confirmed, on this recording, that you had the power of attorney documents prepared in advance. And my mother confirmed, on this recording, that the decision to wait and tell me over a family dinner was deliberate and coordinated. My mother made a sound I had never heard her make before. That recording, I said, is currently uploading to a secure server managed by my firm. So even if you take this phone, the file is already somewhere you can't reach it. My father stepped back again. The atmospheric authority he'd been projecting was dissolving in real time. Without it, he looked smaller. Not dangerous. Just tired. We're your parents, my mother said. It came out like a question. I know, I said. That's the part I've been thinking about for 11 days. I walked to the hallway. Neither of them moved to stop me. Marcus was still standing by the table. He hadn't said anything since the moment I mentioned the DA's office. He looked like a man who had just watched a building collapse and was still waiting to feel the ground shake. I stopped at the threshold. The tenants at the duplex have been notified, I said. Their leases are valid. They won't be displaced. A property management company I've retained will take over the account by the end of the week. The rental income will go into a trust account pending resolution of the fraud case. I paused. I don't want the property. Once the legal process is complete, I'll sell it and donate the proceeds. I don't want anything that came from this. I looked at Marcus one last time. I want you to understand something, I said. I'm not doing this because I hate you. I don't hate you. I'm doing this because every time someone cleaned up your mess and absorbed your consequences, you learned that there was no cost to making them. I'm not willing to be the next surface you practice on. I walked out of the house. The March air hit my face at the bottom of the porch steps and I stopped for a moment and just breathed it. Down the street, someone was walking a dog. A porch light came on 2 houses over. The suburb was performing its evening routine, perfectly indifferent to what had just happened inside my parents' dining room. I got in my car. I sat for a minute, with my hands on the steering wheel. Then I drove back to Charlotte. The civil case moved faster than I expected. My colleague had been thorough and the paper trail was, as she had put it, practically a teaching case. Hartwell Federal Credit Union initiated their own fraud investigation within 48 hours of my initial contact. The LLC that had been registered in my name was dissolved by court order 6 weeks later. The duplex was placed in receivership pending litigation. Marcus hired a defense attorney. The attorney was good. He found procedural angles and filed motions and extended the timeline the way defense attorneys do. In the end, it didn't matter. The signature comparison alone would have been sufficient. The email records, subpoenaed from Marcus's account, showed a 14-month correspondence with a notary who had agreed to process the paperwork for a flat fee paid in cash. The notary lost his commission. Marcus pleaded to a reduced charge of third-degree identity theft and wire fraud, and received 2 years of supervised probation, a civil judgment requiring full restitution, and a permanent notation on his record that would follow him to every future loan application, every professional background check, every rental application for the rest of his life. The paperwork arrived on a Wednesday. I read it at my kitchen table with a cup of tea that I'd actually remembered to drink while it was hot, which felt like a small miracle. My mother called that evening. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message that was 3 minutes long and said, in different configurations of the same sentence, that I had destroyed the family, that I had chosen a legal outcome over her son, that I was cold-hearted, that she hoped I was satisfied. I listened to it once. I didn't save it. I didn't delete it either. I just set the phone down and went back to the document I'd been reading. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived from my father. It was 2 pages, handwritten, which surprised me. He's not a man who writes letters. The first page was an accounting of everything he felt I had done wrong, organized chronologically going back to an argument we'd apparently had at Christmas 2019 that I have almost no memory of. The second page was a single paragraph that said, "Despite everything, you are still our daughter, and we will be here when you're ready to come home." I read that paragraph 4 times. I thought about what it means to have a home that costs you yourself to enter. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. I want to be honest about how I felt during that period, because I think people expect a story like this to end with a particular emotion, triumph, or relief, or some version of vindication. What I actually felt was more complicated and quieter than any of those things. I felt the specific exhaustion of someone who has been vigilant for a very long time and has finally been allowed to put down what they were carrying. Not joy. Not satisfaction. Something closer to equilibrium. There was one afternoon, about 2 months after the dinner, when I drove to the duplex on Mercer Street for the first time. I'd handled everything through lawyers and a property manager. I'd never actually seen it. I parked across the street and sat in my car and looked at the building. 2 stories. Red brick. Window boxes on the 2nd floor with dead plants in them that someone hadn't gotten around to replacing. It was a normal building on a normal street in a city I barely knew, and it had my name on a deed I hadn't signed. 14 months of someone else's plans built on the foundation of my identity. I sat there for a while, not thinking anything in particular, just looking. Then I pulled out my phone and called the property manager to schedule a walkthrough. If I was going to sell the building, I wanted to see it first. The sale closed on a Thursday morning in May. The property manager had done good work. The duplex was in better shape than the record suggested, and the market was cooperative. After the litigation costs, the restitution payments, and the property management fees, there was a net amount that I put into a cashier's check made out to a nonprofit that provides emergency legal services to survivors of financial fraud. I drove to their office and handed the check to a woman named Denise who ran the intake department. She looked at the amount and then looked at me. "Do you want to talk about it?" she said. "Not today," I said. She nodded. "Come back sometime anyway. We can always use people who know what they're doing." I thought about that on the drive home. About the difference between the things that are done to you and the things you build from them. That evening I sat at my kitchen table with a new notebook, plain black cover, clean pages that smelled like potential, and I opened it to the first page. I wasn't going to make a list of grievances. I wasn't going to document anything. I had spent enough of my life being the person who documented things. I wrote down 3 numbers. My savings account balance. My retirement account balance. My current credit score, which had recovered fully and was now higher than it had ever been before, because the fraudulent accounts had been removed and the dispute notations had been cleared, and my actual financial history, the one I had built myself, carefully, without help or shortcuts, was the only thing left on the record. 3 positive numbers. Nothing owed to anyone who hadn't earned it. I closed the notebook and set my pen down. Outside the window, the city was doing what cities do in the early evening, lights coming on in windows, the sound of traffic thinning out, the gradual collective exhale of a day ending. Somewhere down the block someone was grilling, and the smell drifted up through the screen. I thought about Marcus. I thought about the version of this story where I had signed those documents at the dinner table and spent the next 5 years paying down a debt I hadn't created while he collected rent on a property built from my name. I thought about how close that version was to happening. How many people it does happen to, quietly, without a credit alert at midnight and a decade of contract law and a colleague who specializes in financial crimes. I thought about the comment I'd seen recently on a video about family estrangement. Someone had written, "Can we normalize checking our credit reports for family fraud? Trust no one." And under it, dozens of replies from people with their own versions. Their own names on things they hadn't signed. Their own families who had decided that access to someone was the same as permission. If you're watching this and something in this story sounds familiar, not the details but the feeling, the specific weight of being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who is expected to absorb and forgive and continue, I want you to know that the credit report is free. You can pull it once a year from all 3 bureaus at no charge. It takes about 15 minutes. Set an alert. Know your numbers. Don't let someone else write your financial story with your name. Nobody is entitled to your credit score just because they share your last name. Nobody is entitled to your silence just because they call you family. The blood debt, if there was one, was settled the night I walked out of that dining room with my documents and my recording and my car keys and my own future, intact, in my own hands. I didn't look back as I walked down those porch steps. I didn't need to. I already knew what I was leaving behind. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to Oraglow for more stories about people who chose themselves. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to draw a hard line with someone you were supposed to trust?